Martin Luther King Resident Elvira Helaire-Davis turns 109 years old, making her among the longest living descendants of the Temne tribe of Sierra Leone, Africa. Now, a lot of people are like, how did you even get to that? Like, how can you say she's the longest living, or among the longest living? Well, first, she's a century, think about that, a century years old, and then almost a decade years old, right? So that's why we say she's among the longest living Temne descendants living today. As you can see here, this is a picture of my grandmother, Elvira Helaire-Davis, and her husband, Lawrence Davis. And she was born in 1915 on Bermuda Oakland Plantation on July, that's actually 21st, 1915. She was born to her parents, Felix Hilaire and Martha Hamilton. Now here, the folks that you're seeing in this room, everybody that you heard talk about Hilaire, through Felix Hilaire, his family traces back to the same land that my grandmother was born on in that plantation, all the way back to the 1700s, right? So that line through him goes back to the founding of Natchitoches, of Bermuda Plantation, through the Prudhomme family. And so they were enslaved. And our first ancestor in this country was born in Africa. His name was Helaire. And we were able to trace his roots back to the Makua people of Mozambique, Africa. If you look at my grandmother's mother, Martha Hamilton, so if you see those other names at the parade, that's where the Hamilton line comes in. And through her line, she had a mother named Charlotte Waller. And so you saw some relatives today that had the name Waller. Well, that's how the Waller family comes into our family, through my grandmother's grandmother, okay? But then my grandmother, we were fortunate enough to actually find a photo of my grandmother's great-grandmother, who was born in 1832, enslaved in Melrose Plantation, Isle of Breville Plantation in Louisiana. And now her line traces all the way back to the Temne people of Sierra Leone, Africa. A few years ago, after my mom passed away, I was able to take a DNA test to try to learn, well, where does this maternal line trace back to? I spit in the tube, did the DNA test, the results came back from the people of Sierra Leone. And I was fortunate enough to actually take a trip to Africa to meet the village. The interesting part about it, y'all, those who know me know I'm a genealogist. I love to trace our family's history. So when I was over in Africa, I kept thinking, it's so nice to see all these Temne people. I was like, I think I see family, but I don't know. But that's not good enough for me because I want to know my real relatives. Came back a few years later from Africa. First of all, they made me a chief of the village. They gave me dual citizenship of Sierra Leone, all because of our ancestry. The interesting part was, on Ancestry DNA, like our cousin Jan Emanuel mentioned, we can see who our DNA is. So my mom was able to take a DNA test before she passed away. My grandmother, 109 years old, took a DNA test. So now we can actually find our relatives. So I started looking on Ancestry, and I said, okay, well, when I looked for Sierra Leone, Africa, DNA matches, I didn't see anyone pop up on my DNA list. So I was like, we're never gonna find our relatives, right? So far back. I looked through my mom's DNA matches. So out of 17,000 DNA matches, for me, 0 matches in Africa. Look through my mom's DNA matches, one generation above, where you'll get more matches, and there was 20,000 DNA matches, 4th cousins and such. 0 people from Sierra Leone, Africa. We got to my grandmother's DNA, looked through 20,000 of her DNA matches, 4th cousins and such, and only not 5, not 2, but 1 out of 20,000 DNA matches matched to Sierra Leone. So I can tell y'all today, we have been in touch and we found our actual relative in Sierra Leone. When we met them, we found out that the cousin that is a DNA match to my cousin, to my grandmother, is the daughter of the first prime minister of Sierra Leone. And some of you have actually met her in our family group. And so I just want to tell you that in up and coming family reunions, you may see more connection with our community. I also want to point out that some of you may have heard about roots, right? How many of you have actually heard the story of in the story of roots, right? Well, through my grandmother's line, through the Waller side, the family that some of you saw at the parade, we've been able to trace them back to Richard Dick Waller, my second great grandfather. However, now that we're in touch with this Waller family, we can see through DNA connection that we are the Waller family that the Kunta Kinte story was actually built. So if you look at the root story and you start researching that, you see the Waller connection, that is like, so you'll be hearing more about that over the next few months. We'll be talking about our connection to the Waller family via family reunion.